The Papah Trail. Let's go, 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 go. Yeah, 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 yeah. For the love of money, niggas come around. For the love of money, some stay around. For the love of money, what a nigga will do. For the love of the money, yeah. I gotta shake it 12 at night to 5 in the morning. They don't give a fuck now. If it's for that money, niggas gon' bark and they bite like a motherfucking dog. Gotta party like a motherfucking dog. For that cat, I am gon' roof and I'm barking at that cat, and I am gon' take the roof off when I'm riding that ride. Rip, leaning to the left, but I'm steady on the only right. I'm swerving with a purpose, A nigga been sipping on that purple. A nigga been cheaping on that purple. Cause I'm getting money, Cause I'm getting money. And I'm laughing all the way to the motherfucking bank. And I'm telling her, tell me later if she thinking what I'm thinking. Damn me getting money. I walk about the bank and I stuck up in the wheel. Headed to my next big destination. Somewhere where I'm gonna be faded. Sipping on a motherfucking Molotov. Feed in the fucking
We have some big news right now. There will be funding this time around. So remember, there was a 2-week continuing resolution to fund ICE and CBP and the Department of Homeland Security through February 13th. Well, now the government is almost certainly going to shut down because Republicans aren't budging and neither are Democrats. Now, this government shutdown will impact the Department of Homeland Security. It'll impact ICE, CBP, TSA, Coast Guard, other parts of DHS under Kristi Noem's leadership. Democrats say they don't want any more funding for ICE. Republicans haven't really budged on that front. Democrats say they want significant reforms to ICE. Republicans haven't really budged on that front. And so the Senate is about to go home, based on all intents and purposes. There will be a government shutdown this weekend, and it could last for a very long time, making Trump the first president in American history in 2 weeks to give a State of the Union address during a government shutdown. I'll provide you more updates as we get more information. Spread the word. Follow along for more.
In addition to Peter Attia and ecologists, this email is from a Bella Klein to a redacted address. Hey Bella, is there a gynecologist that we normally use? Reply is S Yale and Romoff for blank to see a gyno. The reply is Romoff or clinic blanks once went to which Epstein replies either, and then they reply, in the process of setting her up with Romoff, she is trying to make time in her schedule. Now, I don't know these doctors, and I'm not alleging anything, but I think it's important for any physician named in the files to come forward and explain why they're in it.
Confirmation hearing, Epstein and Bannon exchanged texts about how to handle allegations against Christine Blasey Ford. Epstein wrote to Bannon something along the lines of, make sure they ask Ford about her medications. Bannon replied, Roger. So he's feeding information to Bannon to manipulate the public perceptions of these things. In one thread, Epstein and others diss Trump as, quote, the worst negotiator in human history. That's what Epstein said. These new messages released here may be the confirmation of the worst. Jeffrey Epstein and Steve Bannon are no longer spelling things out. It's a friendly back and forth like I would have with a friend of mine. And it almost sounds like they're purposely speaking in code in these messages. Epstein keeps telling Bannon to focus on Miller, never explaining who that is, never clarifying what that means. Maybe it's Stephen Miller's wife. Epstein explicitly states Bannon can use the island or his Palm Beach house anytime.
Have you hung out with Elon Musk?
No, we interact via messages. Elon is very mysterious in a way that somehow nobody seems to notice. One of his slogans is Ad Astra, to the stars, right? But you can't get to the stars using SpaceX because it's a chemical rocket company. So what the heck? He's not investing in physics. He was going to go into a physics grad school. I think he has a physics BA. So there's something very, very strange about Elon, which is that he's focused on getting to the stars. He doesn't seem to have any interest in physicists. And he has a chemical rocket company. What's going on? His real space company, I think, is not SpaceX. It's XAI. It's Grok. Look at the logo for Grok. I think it's like a black hole profile. Look at its slogan, to understand the universe. I think he's given up on the corruption of science. He keeps talking about the fact that he doesn't like the term researcher. He believes only in engineers. He's constantly really running down scientists. Now, I don't think he doesn't believe in scientists. I think he thinks that science has gotten corrupted and he doesn't want to deal with it.
Hey, I'm processing the news, including the Epstein news here in Norway, where I am now. And I just wanted to note that here, criminal proceedings are already underway. And here, reporters are already making sense of parts of the story. I just wanted to note how refreshing that is and how normal that seems and how good it would be if we in the US would also be able to proceed so quickly. And also wanted to note that we in the US, as we try to make sense of the Epstein story, are probably going to have to rely on some help from other countries where investigations, criminal and journalistic, are underway.
Everyone is starting to be less speechless after finding out that we are all in the Epstein files. So in the Epstein files, the name Leon Black was mentioned more than a few times. And if you do your research, you will find out that he's a very successful businessman. He was accused of doing some very terrible things. And he was also very close friends with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, it just so happens that Leon Black is an owner of a management group that owns a company named LifeTouch that is actually the biggest school photography company in the United States that took the majority of our school photos. So all of our school pictures throughout the entire years and our name could be in the Epstein files. And if not, it could be very well, in the hands of people that we don't want them to be in the hands of. Absolutely wild.
Did Jeffrey Epstein create Bitcoin? Due to the recent files are speculating that he is the creator, developer, or had a massive part in Bitcoin. Satoshi Nakamoto is the pseudonymous creator of Bitcoin, which is outlined in the original 2008 white paper and the subsequent launch of the network in 2009. But Satoshi Nakamoto also had this to say.
I just believe that somebody put that fictitious name in there. Satoshi Nakamoto and Bitcoin.
The true identity behind the name Satoshi Nakamoto remains unknown. And on screen, as I'm talking about this, I will throw up the exact numbers within the DOJ Epstein files so you guys can look for yourself. There is no direct evidence that Epstein created Bitcoin, but there is some very alarming and strange things. So Epstein donated around $850,000 to MIT's Media Lab between 2002 and 2017, which indirectly supported Bitcoin core developers going through the digital currency initiative after the Bitcoin Foundation's collapse in 2015. The emails show Epstein attempted to connect with Bitcoin contributors like Gavin Andresen, who took over as lead maintainer from Satoshi in 2011. Amir Taki, and others as early as 2011, which also is around the time that Satoshi stopped communicating publicly. So very sus and weird. And then in a 2016 email, Epstein claimed to have spoken with some of the founders of Bitcoin while pitching a Sharia compliant digital currency project. And then Epstein invested around $500,000 in Blockstream's 2014 seed round via a fund linked to MIT's Joy Ito. And he had early proximity to early crypto discussions, including potential meetings with figures like Adam Back, who is a cited influence on Bitcoin's white paper. So regardless if you think Epstein created Bitcoin or not, there is no debate he had influence within it. And if you guys want to look up all these files and emails and things for yourself, I'll throw them all up on screen right now. And make sure to subscribe to the channel so you guys don't miss any updates.
.48 hours. There has just been an insane amount of news. We had the massive Epstein file document release, which I'm sure if you're on the internet, you obviously know that this is going on. I wanted to do kind of rapid fire through some ones that I thought were interesting that were related to crypto/Bitcoin. There was also a few other things that happened. There was Justin Sun's girlfriend came out and accused him of basically pumping the token through fake identities on crypto trading platforms in its earliest days to create lots of fake volume by wash trading. This is something that I've talked about before in the past, and this is very vindicating to see it talked about publicly. And then we also had CZ of Binance come out last week and say that he was going to pump $1 billion into the market by buying Bitcoin. And instead, yesterday, he did the exact opposite and sold 1 billion, like market sold $1 billion worth of Bitcoin internally on Binance. There wasn't any actual transfer of transfer of Bitcoin going in or out of the exchange on this, as if some guy just had like $1 billion sitting on Binance and just like clicked sell, market sell on like a random Saturday. Tanked the market, and it's why we're down to 77K today. So let's jump in here because I'm already ticking through the time. So first post is a email from 2011 from Jason Calacanis to Jeffrey Epstein, and apparently Epstein had been inquiring about Bitcoin. Calacanis says, stay away from those Bitcoin guys. They're the crazy open source folks who are radicals. Their motivation is more in line with WikiLeaks or Wikipedia. I really liked this one because to me, this highlights that the early culture of Bitcoin, the early founding of Bitcoin, that the cypherpunks were not involved with these people at all. And that like Bitcoin's core design philosophy and its core design objectives, which is to give humanity open source, permissionless, sound money, is kind of antithetical to these types of people and these types of people's power structures. And this, there's a lot of stuff that I've seen with these people where they're talking about crypto, and we'll get into it if we have more time. But they were actively working crypto scams, and they were actively working crypto scams that were designed to distract from Bitcoin, dilute Bitcoin, deliver on like certain premises that were probably in many ways antithetical to Bitcoin. There's a lot going on here, but I think that this email really highlights to me an important discrepancy that like it would be stupid of you to look at this and go, well, because there's a lot of talk about how Epstein was involved with like Blockstream early on and was involved with like Bitcoin developers early on. But this is distinctly different from what we're talking about with the radicality of the ideology behind the motivation of the software to begin with. So I think that that's really important. Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of people have seen, one of the things that I've seen is that some of the Epstein was an investor in Blockstream. And I don't know to what extent. I haven't gone very deep on this yet. I do know that people were mentioned by name, like Adam Back was mentioned by name and Austin Hill were mentioned by name. But we see here in some of these exchanges where they were kind of, there was a back and forth between Austin Hill and Epstein over Epstein's involvement in Blockstream. There were some concerns because Epstein was also heavily involved in Ripple and in Stellar. Those are Jed McCaleb's projects. And if you've heard me talk about those in the past, you know I'm not fans of Ripple and Stellar, and neither was Austin Hill at the time because he rightfully viewed those projects as very antithetical to Bitcoin's mission. And we see here in this email exchange that Epstein exclaimed that he didn't trust Austin Hill, assuming that that's who he's referring to, which I think it is in this context. I think we can pretty safely conclude that that's who he's talking about here in this email. Anyway, for what that's worth, right? I don't know to what extent did these two have dealings together. Does this mean that you can't trust Blockstream? Maybe, I don't know. I don't think that it's any kind of a smoking gun. It seems pretty clear to me when I look at this that Epstein didn't like these people because these Blockstream, in my opinion, these were the cypherpunks. These were the guys carrying the cypherpunk torch and ethos of Bitcoin for a long period of time. And of course, not the only ones, but kind of the face of it in a lot of respects, right? And kind of also the face of the opposition to the big blocker fork, the BCH fork, which we got some more info on. There's one email in here from Brian Armstrong communicating to Epstein as an investor in Coinbase, basically telling him, "Don't worry, we're taking control of Bitcoin. We're moving it away from the early idealists by having this block size fork soon, where we're increasing the block size to." And this is not new news. We knew that Coinbase was in support of the New York Agreement back whenever this fork was originally planned back in the Bitcoin Classic days. We did a video on this, or Bitcoin Unlimited or whatever it was. We did a video on this a while back about Gavin Andreessen and his connections with Epstein, how he came out in some of the emails. But it is really interesting to see, like Kyle Torpy says, it is really interesting to see here Armstrong speaking about this so matter-of-factly to his investors, that like basically assuring them that this fork is going to happen and that this fork will be Bitcoin in the future. Like we're taking control. We're taking it away from the idealists. This obviously didn't happen. There's a lot of correspondence between Epstein and Jeremy Rubin. Jeremy Rubin has been a developer that contributed to Bitcoin. And also a whole bunch of other crypto scams. And you see here Epstein as an investor basically mentoring, providing advice, guidance, whatever, to Rubin in some of these emails. He mentions that he can't get involved in basically any pump and dumps. He can't invest publicly directly in any pump and dumps because it's questionable ethically. That isn't him saying, "Oh, I don't know about that because I don't want to hurt people. I don't want to harm people." What he's saying is, I'm a high profile person and I can't invest publicly in any of these projects if they are going to do something that's like blatantly unethical, which is what a lot of these crypto tokens were doing. So interesting stuff there. I'm seeing a lot of people pull that out of context and pretends like that's some sort of weird line in the sand that he wasn't allowed to cross, that he wasn't willing to cross. I don't get that feeling at all, because he says literally, as I am high profile, it cannot be of questionable ethics or whatever. Anyway, moving on. We also saw some information that like Epstein was involved with Zcash, which is not surprising at all, because this is just another one of those projects that was like a complete scam from start to finish. Everything about this project was ridiculous. And all of the common theme here that I'm continuing to see is that what I've believed for a very long time, which is that so much of crypto has been a coordinated attempt to subvert and suppress Bitcoin, to tarnish Bitcoin's reputation, to steal away the spotlight from Bitcoin's progress that it provides for humanity, to diminish the effects of an open source permissionless sound money protocol that anybody can participate in, and to just replace it with bullshit. And there's clearly a well-funded attempt to do this here, but there was a lot of money made in crypto, and in my opinion, a lot of it was certainly ethically gray, right? Most of the people that made money on these crypto tokens were doing so by promising things that were never delivered, which is the highlight of like securities fraud. But anyway, we're beside the point. Just the fact that this guy seemed to be involved in a lot of this this crypto stuff that was literally designed to diminish the effects of Bitcoin. Moving on to the CZ thing, we did kind of cover this whole thing in perpetuity already. I mean, in completeness, not perpetuity. CZ's a scumbag. I don't know what else to say, guys. He said he was going to buy $1 billion of Bitcoin. Instead, he sold $1 billion of Bitcoin, crashed the market on an extremely illiquid Saturday. Why would you do that? Why would you do that unless you hated Bitcoin? I don't know. These people don't like Bitcoin. They've never liked Bitcoin. They don't want it to succeed. Pretty simple. The last one that I thought was super cool was, well, cool is a relative here. I thought it was very compelling that this is some person claiming to be Justin Sun's former girlfriend. I don't know how true this is. I don't have any information about this. I can't corroborate this. Claiming that she has evidence that he used multiple identities to register numerous Binance accounts through which he conducted coordinated buying and selling on the Binance exchange to artificially inflate the price of TRX, followed by large-scale selling to dump on retail investors, obviously making himself super rich in the process. I mean, obviously, right? But I've been saying this stuff about these freaking crypto scams for like the last 8 years. And it's vindicating to see insiders finally coming out and saying, yeah, no, this stuff totally happened. None of these people are above board. All this stuff is scams. It's wash trading. Most of crypto isn't real. Just buy Bitcoin. Just hold it. Buy it, use it, store your wealth with it, and be free. You don't have to live as a fiat slave in the fiat system anymore. You can just use Bitcoin.
This is Matthew Kratter's Bitcoin University. Today I want to talk about Andy Back on did Jeffrey Epstein fund Adam Back? As part of that, we learned about Adam Back and Blockstream's trip to St. Thomas Island, which is adjacent to Epstein Island. Adam Back put out the statement yesterday saying in 2014, during Blockstream's seed round investor roadshow, the company was introduced to then MIT Media Lab director Joy Ito. Subsequently, Blockstream met with Jeffrey Epstein, who's described at the time, and it wasn't just Blockstream, it was Adam personally who met with Jeffrey Epstein. He fails to mention that. Subsequently, Blockstream met with Jeffrey Epstein, who was described at the time as a limited partner in Ito's fund. That fund later invested a minority stake in Blockstream. A few months later, Ito's fund divested its Blockstream shares due to a potential conflict of interest and other concerns. Blockstream has no direct nor indirect financial connection with Jeffrey Epstein or his estate. And as part of yesterday's video, we looked at these travel reservations for Adam Back and the Blockstream people who are looking to raise money for their startup. This trip took place April 16th, 2014. We can see the reservations were from April 17th through April 20th of 2014. We can see the various personal assistants coordinating here for the stay, I believe, at the Ritz-Carlton on St. Thomas Island. And we can see Adam Back's name here, along with Austin Hill, who is another co-founder of Blockstream. But the really big news happened after I made my video yesterday. So we have this trip that we know Adam Back went on from April 17th through April 20th to St. Thomas Island. But what we didn't know yesterday, I was able to uncover an email from Jeffrey Epstein to Amir Taki. This was sent on April 19th, 2014. So right on that same weekend that Adam Back and Austin Hill were visiting Epstein on St. Thomas, Jeffrey Epstein writing to Amir Taki, "Are you still playing in the Bitcoin space? Where are you? I have Andy Back on my island this weekend." And the thought, again, we have no proof, but the thought is that this is probably Adam Back, who didn't just meet with Jeffrey Epstein as part of this seed round, but also didn't just stay on St. Thomas Island, but also actually went to Epstein island. This is unbelievable. Here we can see Amir Taki, who's an early Bitcoin dev, a fairly controversial guy who's gotten himself into some trouble and was into some of the same stuff as Epstein, as we can see here from the Bitcoin Talk forum, where Amir Taki is offering two 16-year-old girls together for 50 Bitcoin an hour, one 16-year-old girl plus one 18-year-old boy for 50 Bitcoin an hour. Pay up front, anything goes. This was for erotic chat on Skype, but you can imagine that this could have led to other things, and probably did, especially considering that Amir Taki and Epstein were good friends, and looks like they're trying to bring their good friend Andy back in on it as well. This is the shocking news. As Mechanic writes here, you're missing the point. If you naively went to the island, as it appears Adam, Austin, and others may have done, then you have very likely been set up and blackmailed. That's the entire reason they would lure important people there in the first place. Once that happens, it's not a nothing. Guy in the white paper, one of the most influential people in the entire Bitcoin space, namely Adam Back, you don't think there's utility in compromising him. Every square inch of that island was monitored. And then Mechanic going on to write, can't believe people are trying to downplay this. It's not the financial involvement regarding Blockstream and Epstein. This is the misunderstanding that a lot of the B cashers and the BSVers have. It's instead about this, as Mechanic writes, we know Epstein likely invested in everything under the sun, so it's not useful considering it watertight proof of contamination. The actual issue is when a powerful, influential person in a field actually goes to the island and gets blackmailed. Once that happens, you're toast. It's possible that Austin, Adam, and others didn't end up going to the island, but they've said nothing about it and clearly were planning on it back in April of 2014. Saying, hey, I'd go to a party on a beach if an unknown billionaire invited me is relatable. But if it turned out to be Epstein Island, then number one, you were first off just unlucky or naive. That sucks. But number two, if you're influential in disruptive tech like Bitcoin, then no one should ever believe you're on the right side of controversial discussions again, as I believe about Adam Back. You must be assumed to be corrupt. Number three, it was pretty obvious Adam was acting in bad faith prior to these drops anyway. So now you have a very compelling reason why. And then I think this explains a lot of why Adam has been behaving so bizarrely, has been advocating for things that were never advocated for before on Bitcoin. If you're finding this video interesting so far, I just pause really briefly here to ask you to help to support this channel's mission. Hit the subscribe button. That does really help. Leave a like, leave a comment, question, suggestion for a future video, and share this video with a friend or family member. Then we have Brian Bishop, who is one of the gatekeepers to the whole BIP process, the Bitcoin Improvement Proposal process. And he's also a Bitcoin dev mailing list gatekeeper. We've talked about him before. If you've been following the channel, I'll put a link to this video in which I discuss him in the description notes below. And the problem we've been having with him is that there's been censorship happening at the BIP level and at the mailing list level. As Brian writes here, it's not true that you must post to the mailing list to suggest a BIP. You can post it anywhere in the internet and distribute it to anyone. And then I responded to him pointing out that the BIP3 documentation says something different. I don't want to go too deep into the weeds here. I thought Giacomo had a nice response to him back in December. Maybe Bitcoin developers need a new mailing list where they can discuss BIPs that Brian personally dislikes. Also considering that the first required step for a BIP is mailing list discussion. Brian Bishop writing here, nobody can force someone to platform or support a dumb BIP. Now, it turns out Brian Bishop has been working on stuff besides BIPs, which Lola talks about here. While everybody's worried about what Bitcoin companies took money from Epstein, there seem to be only two regular Bitcoin core contributors who actively worked with Epstein. One of them is Brian Bishop, and his work with Epstein seems to have been mostly unrelated to Bitcoin. Instead, it appears the two worked on a designer baby company partnership. It seems that Blockstream co-founder Austin Hill, who we saw visited Epstein along with Adam Back, seems that Blockstream co-founder Austin Hill introduced Bishop to Epstein. In an email titled Just the Three of Us, Austin wrote to Epstein with Bishop in CC. One idea stuck in Brian's head. If you're serious, then we should set up some secure communications, and I'll let Brian pitch you on a way to have total deniability. This is again talking about giving total deniability to a convicted sex offender at the time, linking to a video of Austin Powers' 2 clip of Dr. Evil and Mini-Me titled Just the Two of Us. Shortly after, Bishop and Epstein began discussing funding, pitch decks, R&D on medical tourism, embryo implants, selling additive DNA, deniability, requirements for secrecy, and the legalities of gene modifications, noting that in the US, self-experimentation is not explicitly banned. In addition to the emails below are excerpts of what appear to be transcripts of a girl's diary that seems to have been forced to carry out Epstein's babies, calling herself an incubator, saying she was chosen for her superior genetics, describing how her daughter was stolen from her just 15 minutes after giving birth, how they gave her just weeks until it started again, and how she was being held with other girls. She writes, "I can't go to school like this. Why won't anyone make it stop? Please release me from this torture and hell." According to Brian Bishop, a Tokyo-based investor involved in a financial services company that operates various exchanges and acquired a Bitcoin exchange, had made Bishop an offer for his designer babies company, noting that Japan now allows for human embryo gene editing. Taking money from Epstein is one thing. Working on a psychopathic human baby eugenics project with a registered sex offender who had pled guilty to soliciting minors for prostitution is a lot more than an unfortunate lapse in moral judgment. As for Brian Bishop and Austin Hill, I hope you'll be shedding some light on what in the actual world you two are up to here, etc. Mechanic writes, in response to this revolting, Brian Bishop belongs a million miles away from anything Bitcoin related. This is the nastiest of all the Epstein Bitcoin leaks, in my opinion. Now, there's a silver lining to all of this. I don't want everyone to get too depressed because the bad actors are being outed. And all of us who told you that Adam Back was probably compromised are now in the process of being vindicated. And this meme, surprisingly, is being proven to have been correct. Gloria Zhao, the girl boss, Adam Back, Epstein-related gaslighting, and Brian Bishop, baby embryo editing gatekeeper to the bit process and the Bitcoin dev mailing list. I think these last 8 months have been a great lesson. If you've been one of those Bitcoin educators or influencers who's been an endless sim for Adam Back, I'm really embarrassed for you. Maybe you should take some time off. And while you're gone, maybe you should review again what these words mean. Verify, don't trust. This is what Bitcoiners are actually supposed to do, even if they're a Bitcoin influencer. And maybe if you actually own any Bitcoin, which I'm not sure some of you do, you should take your job going forward as a guardian of Bitcoin a little bit more seriously, instead of taking sides in a debate based on what will get you the most influencer spots at a conference or interviews. I would say that Stefan Livera has been one of the smarmiest sims for Adam Back that you can find. I was just going through his Twitter here. He's having a little interchange here saying Adam Back's talking about how CSAM's not a risk, and Stefan Livera saying that that Luke is the bad actor. Stefan writes, who's the bad actor now? Well, Stefan, who is the bad actor now? Did Luke go to Epstein Island, or was it Adam Back, your hero who you're defending? And then we have Walker here defending Adam in this long screed. I'll just read part of it. If you spent the past weeks bashing Adam because you think he's a spam apologist, now's a good time to check your assumptions and consider that Adam wants what's best for Bitcoin, as do you, as do I. It's possible to disagree with the efficacy of a proposed solution without being a spam apologist. Just because someone has a different opinion than you do about a solution does not mean that a person is your enemy or has been compromised. And then he kisses up to Adam at the end. Oh, Adam, I hope I haven't misrepresented anything that you said. Now, Bitcoin Core continues to implode along with the reputation of its biggest apologists. The Bitcoin network is actively routing around Bitcoin Core as the NOTS node chart is breaking out. So the world is healing, more Bitcoin NOTS nodes, and also a lot more nodes for the BIP 110 soft fork, which we're going to try to return to in the coming days. But a very sad story if this Andy Back turns out to be Adam Back, as I would guess he is. This is a very sad day for Bitcoin, as well as for those who move in the same spheres as Adam Back. So we'll continue to monitor this as the fallout continues. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the subscribe and like buttons. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I publish my next video. And let me know your questions and comments in the comment section below. Thanks a lot for watching.
There are stories that hide in plain sight. Stories that never make the news. This is one of them. It begins long before Bitcoin appeared in 2008. It begins inside private meetings, hidden research labs, and the shadow network that connected wealth, intelligence, and the future of digital finance. Jeffrey Epstein moved through the world with a different kind of access. He did not just know powerful people. He financed the programs that shaped their discoveries. Mighty Media Lab. Harvard mathematics, cryptography circles, and most important of all, research tied to anonymous digital money systems, the same fields that Bitcoin would later explode out of. This is where the deep dive begins. While the public saw Epstein as a figure of scandal, intelligence circles viewed him as something else. A connector, a broker, a funder of minds that worked on systems far ahead of their time. Testimonies from researchers revealed that Epstein specifically asked about distributed databases, privacy-preserving financial rails, and ways to move capital outside traditional banking, the type of concepts that align directly with Bitcoin's core design. The timeline draws an even sharper edge. Between 2005 and 2008, Epstein funneled hidden donations into MIT programs linked with cryptography and advanced mathematics. At the exact same time, anonymous cypherpunk forums were debating the foundations of digital cash. And then, suddenly, a name appeared online: Satoshi Nakamoto. The white paper, a network, the birth of Bitcoin. The thriller begins here, because Bitcoin is built on SHA-256, an algorithm created by the United States National Security Agency. Privacy tools used by early Bitcoin users came out of research funded by the United States Navy. Bitcoin appeared publicly independent, but its entities tied to intelligence networks. Epstein had direct ties to many of these institutions through funders, scientists, and contacts inside government agencies. This does not prove that Epstein created Bitcoin. That is not the claim. The theory is deeper and more unsettling. It suggests that Epstein may have funded or connected the minds who experimented with the early ideas that led to Bitcoin. It suggests he moved within the same circles where the blueprint for decentralized money was quietly forming. It suggests that Bitcoin may not have been born in isolation, but in an environment shaped by intelligence-linked researchers who were working on anonymous digital finance long before the world was ready for it. After Epstein's fall, leaked emails revealed that MIT executives had been ordered to keep his donations secret. Not because they were small, but because they were significant, high-level, directly tied to private research groups studying encrypted systems, digital identity layers, advanced cryptographic tools, all components that now anchor the digital asset world. So why would someone like Epstein care about this? Because controlling new forms of money means controlling power. A decentralized currency emerging during a global financial crisis would reshape the world, and anyone who could influence the direction of that system would hold leverage that governments could not. Today, the official story says Bitcoin was created by Satoshi Nakamoto, but the deeper story says Bitcoin may have been shaped by a network of the wealthy, the powerful, and those who wanted a financial system that lived beyond borders. Epstein may not have coded Bitcoin, but the evidence suggests he funded the world that made it possible. And that is why this story must be told, not as a conclusion, but as a question. Who truly stands behind the first digital currency to threaten the global financial order? And how many more hidden players shaped the world of crypto long before we ever knew it existed? Subscribe to LTL Productions. The truth is always deeper.
Billionaire Salesforce CEO Mark Benioff is facing monitoring foreign employees. It happened during a speech to Stack Up, and they didn't laugh. Some of them even booed. And then later, when Salesforce released the recording of the speech, the ICE joke had been cut out. And part of why employees are so upset is because a few months ago, Salesforce offered its AI services to ICE to help them triple their staff and hire 10,000 new officers. Plus, Mark Benioff, who is pictured here with Pam Bondi, said he fully supports President Trump and even praised Trump for sending the National Guard to San Francisco. Because of all this, Salesforce employees are outraged, and executives are even starting to speak out against Benioff. Like the general manager of Slack, which is owned by Salesforce, wrote to staff, "I cannot defend or explain the jokes. They do not align with my personal values." Now, an open letter is circulating among employees calling on Benioff to denounce ICE and rescind his offer to work with them. So far, he has not done that, and after seeing how lightly he takes the topic, I think it's a long shot that he ever will. News Girls post daily videos on ICE, Epstein, billionaires, corruption, so follow to stay in the loop.
Recently, Donald
it would have been even worse. So that's what we did in crises. And, some of your views then were you should let the system burn down. A phoenix will rise from the ashes. You really have no business in doing this.
Now, in this scene right here in The Simpsons, where the all-seeing eye says,
"Buy crypto, suckers!"
Jesus is sitting right there. Now ask yourself, what is Jesus a member of? The Holy Trinity. But the elite don't just use a cross, they use ancient symbols of the Trinity to hide their tracks. One of those is the triskelion, which is the Ripple logo. The other is the fleur-de-lis. And if you look at the 1988 Economist magazine cover predicting a one world currency, look at the head of the phoenix. Sitting right there is the fleur-de-lis. These aren't separate ideas. They are the same triple flow signature right in plain sight. Now, as you already know, the all-seeing eye in the Simpsons scene is from the dollar bill. And this is the eye of providence, representing God watching over humanity, and specifically the new American nation. And if you type in the phrase on the reverse side of the dollar, annuit coeptis, into gematria, you get Phoenix Rising, One Big Beautiful Bill, and Excellent Burger. Now, seemingly random, but there's no such thing as coincidences, because in one episode, Marge invests into Excellent Burger and it goes vertical.
I found XLN stock. How much would you like to buy? I don't know. How's 10 pairs? Submitting order for 1,000 shares of XLN stock. Please confirm. Confirm? Ignoring question mark. Buy order executed. Oh no, Maggie, I accidentally bought Excellent Burger stock. Alexa, sell those stocks. Ordering yellow socks. You get everything wrong. Excellent Burger. Well, they seem to be succeeding, but I'd feel awful if the stock would up. It just went up. We made money. $700.
So that's a subtle nod hinting at the Phoenix Project. Even Brad Garlinghouse was filmed in 2010, walking through the AOL office, talking about the
used to be in kind of alpha/beta, and
now this goes much deeper.
Years ago, Martin Novak discovered what makes things go viral. He did. The result, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. His theory, Darwin is incomplete. There's a third mechanism that's talked about game theory for quite some time, but game theory has never been an evolutionary concept, and we haven't really seen it in the real world work until Novak's theories and until Jeffrey Epstein's donations. But why? Why does a billionaire want to invest in this sort of technology and research? Why was Jeffrey Epstein so interested in developing game theory and social evolution? Well, what you're going to learn during this episode of Off Air is that Jeffrey Epstein was interested in something that would change our world forever, and that is viral content, artificial intelligence, and eugenics. And by the end of this episode, you're going to understand exactly what was going on at that secret underground Harvard laboratory and why a billionaire spent $30 million on research, leading to overthrowing countries, the destabilization of elections, and even the destabilization of the United States of America.
Growing fast this evening. The New York Times has confirmed that Catherine Ruemmler, the former Obama White House counsel, Goldman Sachs general, resigned this evening from her position at Goldman Sachs, one of the nation's top banks. If you knew anything about Catherine Ruemmler and you knew the Epstein files as well as I have, you would know that she has had an extensive relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. They communicated regularly, birthday wishes, plans to go to an island. I mean, so many things. She even got his advice about potentially becoming Obama's attorney general. I mean, there was extensive communications all the way into the mid-2010s. Tonight, she has resigned from her post. Another Epstein fallout has occurred. This is a significant development. I'll have more updates for you very soon. Follow along for all the news you need to know about. We have some news right now. Cardi B is going after the Department of Homeland Security, blasting DHS and ICE. As long as she doesn't drug and rob our agents, we'll consider that an improvement over her past behavior. Cardi B responds, if we talking about drugs, let's talk about Epstein and friends drugging underage girls to rape them. Why y'all don't want to talk about the Epstein files? She has a good point. Why isn't the Trump administration wanting to talk about the Epstein files and all of the wealthy and powerful men in the Epstein files who abuse girls, who have never been charged? Unindicted co-conspirators of Jeffrey Epstein's never been charged. So Cardi B is going back after the Department of Homeland Security. I'll have more updates for you soon on this front. As always, spread the word. And if you want to support my work, follow along, stay up to date on all the news that you need to know about. I'll have more to come soon.
Did you hear about how this started in 2005?
Glad you're saying that because I'm.
This is crazy.
Two girls fight.
Early 2005, two girls at Royal Palm Beach High School got into a fight during which one girl repeatedly called the other girl a prostitute or hooker. Following the fight, school administrations and parents investigated, searching one of the girls' purses and finding $300 in cash. The confession. The student in need for massages by a wealthy man, later identified as Jeffrey Epstein. According to investigations, at least 15 students were lured in Epstein's Palm Beach home. Holy shit.
That's so crazy.
Now
That's in
imagine
2005.
Imagine if those girls didn't get in that fight.
This is the founder of one of the world's largest cryptocurrencies, and he's going by Donald's uniform. But despite the market downturn, he seems to be in good spirits. Hey, he's got moves. His name is Charles Hoskinson, and he found a note which was trading at $3 and now down to 25 cents. But to be fair, he's not working at McDonald's. He's just talking about the state of the market right now.
We have some major news this morning. The fallout over the Epstein files. People resigned, lost their jobs, and now criminal charge. General counsel of Goldman Sachs stepped down. In addition, the Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem, remember that the man who was involved with the torture video, just stepped down as the CEO and chairman of the Dubai-based DP World. In addition, the Norwegian Prime Minister, the former Norwegian Prime Minister Thorbjørn Jagland, has been criminally charged with aggravated corruption following a police investigation into his alleged ties to Jeffrey Epstein, including scrutiny over gifts, travel, loans, and more. So 2 top officials resigning, 2 very powerful people resigning, 1 very powerful person criminally charged. The fallout is growing. Spread the word, follow for more.
This is Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong. He's actually one of the richest people. A lot of people are coming to Brian's defense, and this is why. He's actually only sold about 5% of his total Coinbase stock holdings. That means he's actually held on to the remaining 95%, and they're actually saying he's only selling this for tax reasons. So what do you think? Is he a bad guy for selling 5% of his stock?
No power. But there is one thing they couldn't compromise. The newly unsealed Epstein documents from the DOJ are rattling the world right now. Between the 3 million pages of investigative notes, a terrifying narrative is surfacing. Jeffrey Epstein's fingerprints are all over the early days of the Bitcoin ecosystem. Did he fund the core developers? Did he invest in the first major exchanges back in 2014? And is this campaign of confusion the reason Bitcoin's price is crashing in 2026? The establishment wants us to believe Bitcoin is compromised, so we stay trapped in their fiat prison. But the truth is more explosive. Epstein may have tried to capture the developers, but he could never capture the code. Be sure to check out my latest video breaking down the entire Epstein Bitcoin conspiracy from the unsealed files, exposing a century-long financial industrial complex operation designed to psy up us all.
There's now proof linking this guy. The early days of cryptocurrency XRP. Take a company executive, and he's mad at Jeffrey Epstein for investing in his Bitcoin company as well as investing in Ripple Labs and XLM. He even threatens Jeffrey in the email saying, I will take your allocation away if you keep investing in Ripple and Jed's company. Don't be betting on two different horses in the same race. So it does look like XRP is connected to powerful players, just not the ones you expected.
What if I told you that one of the most reviled was not just dabbling in finance and politics, but was also an early, significant investor in one of the biggest names in cryptocurrency? Well, guys, that is precisely the bombshell that has just exploded across the cryptos. Are painting a picture that may shock many, right? These docs connect Epstein directly to the early funding of Coinbase. You know, forget the usual market movements. Let's put the charts away. We don't need to talk about 2026 price, whatever, because this is bigger and it could stick around. It is about the intersection of high finance, dark secrets, and the very foundations of the crypto industry. Because just hours ago, news broke, primarily from sources like Decrypt, that buried deep within the latest tranche of Jeffrey Epstein unsealed files, millions of documents, right? We're talking millions of documents, was a crypto-related revelation that sent shockwaves through the industry. So what exactly happened? The documents reveal that Epstein made a $3 million investment into Coinbase back in December of 2014. Just let that sink in. This wasn't some minor play. It was a substantial amount at the time because the deal valued Coinbase at just $400 million. And today, Coinbase is a publicly traded company worth approximately $51 billion. And here's where it gets even more concerning. The deal was reportedly brokered by Brock Pierce, the co-founder of Tether, and his firm Blockchain Capital. But even in a bigger twist, guys, the emails indicate that Coinbase co-founder Fred Erzum was not only aware of Epstein's involvement, but even proposed meeting with him in New York in December of 2014. Emails were produced, dated back in December 3rd, 2014, that shows Erzum writing, quote, I have a gap between noon and 3 today, but again, not crucial for me. Would be nice to meet him if convenient. Guys, this investment came over 6 years after Epstein's 2008 conviction for child prostitution. His status as a registered sex offender was public knowledge. This wasn't a secret side deal with an unknown entity. The leadership at Coinbase, it appears, knew exactly who they were dealing with. So Epstein eventually cashed out of half his stake in 2018, netting a tidy profit of nearly 15 million bucks from an initial $1.5 million allocation. He appears to have retained the other half of his death till his death in 2019, which means his estate likely still holds a significant stake in Coinbase, benefiting from its explosive growth. But the plot thickens here with Brock Pierce, because documents show Pierce conduit. He was allegedly CC'd on early major and even Bitcoin's foundational scaling debates. This paints a picture of Epstein having much deeper and earlier access to the crypto inner circle than anyone ever imagined. So why is this coming out today? Kind of a perfect storm, really, right? The DOJ, the Department of Justice, is systematically unsealing millions of pages of Epstein-related files. Journalists and investigators are meticulously sifting through them, and this crypto bombshell just happened to be in the latest batch. Now, this specific release also implicated Howard Lutnick, the current U.S. Commerce Secretary, showing alleged continued social engagement with Epstein years after Lutnick claimed he cut ties. This broader context is driving massive attention to these specific files. And Bitcoin, guys, as we speak, is in a meltdown alongside gold and silver, having dipped significantly in recent hours. I think it just broke 72, actually. While unrelated to this news, whenever the market is shaky, Additional negative news tends to hit harder and gain more traction as people seek explanations. So guys, is this a big old nothing burger, or is there something that we need to talk about? Because what is the actual impact on Coinbase and the broader crypto market? Is it a nothing burger from a decade ago, or does it have real teeth? So let's take a look. Legally, taking money from a convicted felon, while optically terrible, is not illegal. This happened over a decade ago. Coinbase was a small startup in a interesting brand new industry. And due diligence, Coinbase should, however, reputationally, this is where it hurts. This news is a massive black eye, and it raises serious questions about the ethics, judgment, and move fast and break things mentality of crypto's early days. For a company that's worked so hard for legitimacy and risk, is a huge step backwards in public perception. Expect aggressive questions from lawmakers, investors, and the public. So far, we have had no comments from Coinbase, Fred Ursam, or Brock Pierce, and their silence, while strategically understandable, will only fuel the speculation. Guys, for the broader crypto market, regulatory scrutiny, because this will undoubtedly intensify calls for tighter regulations on crypto. Critics are going to point to this as proof that the industry has always been a haven for illicit funds and questionable characters. And for an industry still fighting for mainstream trust, having Epstein's name linked to its early funding is a devastating blow. It makes it harder to convince traditional finance and everyday people that crypto is truly clean and secure. The industry is going to have to reckon with its past. The Wild West era meant lax controls. And now the chickens are coming home to roost, because this isn't the last we're going to hear of unsavory characters or questionable dealings from crypto's formative years. Guys, so is it a nothing burger? Right, let's answer that. From a purely legal standpoint, concerning immediate direct consequence for Coinbase today, perhaps, but from a reputational, ethical, and long-term regulatory perspective, absolutely not. This is a massive story that is going to linger for a while. So what do we need to watch now? Let's look for Coinbase's response. Will Brian Armstrong issue a statement? What's he going to say? Will the SEC, Congress, or other bodies launch investigations or demand explanations? And are there more crypto connections lurking in the remaining unsealed documents? Guys, this is a developing story, and we're going to be keeping a very close eye on it. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Is this decades old news that doesn't really matter? Or does it genuinely tarnish the crypto industry? Your thoughts are important. And guys, also, if you found this helpful, hit that like button, hit subscribe. I will keep you up to date on this story as it unfolds. This is Luke with Ledger Prime. We'll see you.
But in this, the main thing that I'm focusing on is that David Schwartz said, I wouldn't be at all surprised if this is just the tip of the giant iceberg. And guess what? He was correct. Guys, what we just uncovered is absolutely shocking. This community, the XRP community itself, is relentless. They will go out. I mean, guys, I remember the SEC lawsuit. During that entire time, the amount of researchers in this space that were finding the craziest documents. I mean, guys, it was insane. But this is why this community is so incredible. We have people in this space that will dig and dig and dig until they find every single detail. I want to start off with this post here from the Bearable Bull, because we have here. So you mean to tell me Epstein hired Jay Clayton and Gary Gensler to suppress Ripple and XRP with a 5-year SEC lawsuit because it was a threat to Bitcoin and its failed technology? Bitcoin failed as a payment system. XRP was always the one, and Epstein knew it. The truth will be hard for them to swallow. Because if you guys haven't been, looking into what's been happening over the last couple weeks, yeah, Bitcoin, it's not looking good for Bitcoin. A lot of the early Bitcoin devs were funded by Epstein. Not only that, but Bitcoin was essentially created as a currency to get around, AML systems and KYC systems. Now, over time, yes, Bitcoin has changed. There's a lot of things that have happened, but the main focus of this is that, yes, Bitcoin was heavily supported by Epstein. This is shocking, but it's not a big surprise to me at all, because for years we know that Bitcoin has been utilized in the craziest ways possible, especially illegal activity. But this is not new news. We know about Silk Road. We know about the dark web use cases for Bitcoin. It's always going to be there. But when we think about the early development of Bitcoin coming from Epstein money, I mean, that's shocking to me. Now we go over here because Alex Cobb posted, wow, even up to March of 2019, people were making sure Epstein was in the loop on XRP. Weird. Now, this originally got posted from Cowboy Crypto, which we'll talk about that here in a second. But the main thing here was a full post regarding Coinbase being in the middle of a massive controversy. Kraken CEO believes Ripple's XRP and the Neutrino startup are involved. Now, we're going to get into the details of this, but this is a very big deal, because if you guys do know, right, Coinbase was one of the, few exchanges initially, we're talking about initially, to delist XRP and announce that they were not supporting Ripple and XRP. It was back on December 28th. We're talking about 8 days after the lawsuit officially dropped. I think it was maybe even 1 week. Coinbase said that it will suspend trading of XRP, the cryptocurrency at the heart of the SEC lawsuit against Ripple Labs. Now, they didn't really make a big statement regarding it, but basically they said that they believe XRP was, a security as well. We have here from Coinbase's CLO, we will continue to monitor legal developments related to XRP and update our customers as more information becomes available. Coinbase said users' XRP wallets will remain available for receiving and withdrawal functionality after the trading suspension. But the main focus here is the fact that, Coinbase was not supporting XRP at all. They could have talked openly about, how they do support XRP and they support Ripple in this battle, so they're not going to delist it. But they were, taking the easy way out, and they wanted to play it safe, and they wanted to delist it. But what's crazy about that is that, when Coinbase started to get targeted, stablecoin yield, and also even futures contracts and things like that, all of a sudden Coinbase was saying, oh, hey, we need all of your support. This is unlawful. There's no way that the SEC should be able to do this. They were even going after Coinbase wallet, and they wanted, community support. Where was the support for XRP? Where was the support for Ripple? It wasn't there. They were not supporting them. They completely delisted XRP. Guys, I have to interrupt the video because we have a serious problem right now in crypto, and that is data breaches coming from Ledger. That's right, the cold storage device creator, Ledger. This is unacceptable. I've talked about this in the past. This is a very common theme with Ledger. It's been happening for years and years and years now. This is also why I promote iTrust Capital. iTrust Capital obviously is an affiliate of the channel. They are a sponsor of the channel as well. Yes, I do make money from iTrust Capital. I'm very transparent about that. However, I also did research on iTrust Capital for years. I've utilized iTrust Capital for years. I've followed iTrust Capital for years. This is a platform that I trust, that I have utilized, that I love their products, especially the premium custody account, because it allows me to sleep at night with zero concern about my digital assets, because it's a fully closed loop system. Not to mention, they have partnerships with Coinbase Asset Management, Fidelity Digital Assets, and even Wells Fargo and Fireblocks. This is one of the best platforms to custody your assets. Obviously, if you want to have full control of your keys, then hey, Decent Wallet is very good as well. But this is a fully closed loop, institutional grade custody platform that I personally think is one of the best, especially to get away from things like this. So if you guys do want to sign up, there's going to be a link down in the description below, as well as in the comments below. And let's jump back on into the video. Now, I bring all of this up because we have over here Big shout out to Stellar News 007 for this. These Epstein emails expose why Coinbase and Tether colluded against Ripple. Number one, Coinbase. Epstein invested $3 million in Coinbase in 2014 at a $400 million valuation. And yes, we have that in the documents here. We'll talk about that here in a second. Emails show the deal routed via LLCs. Coinbase co-founder Fred Ehrsam appears to have been personally aware and supportive of the convicted sex offender's multi-million-dollar investment in the company in 2014. Same players later positioned as regulatory allies. Number two, Tether. The Coinbase deal was arranged by Tether co-founder Brock Pierce and Blockchain Capital. Epstein-linked actors, structures, and regulatory blind spots discussed. Control disguised as liquidity. Tether has refused an independent audit of its reserves for a decade now. Then came the pattern. Lawsuit launched, XRP delisted, negative PR at a full force, institutions frozen. Coinbase CEO is now against Clarity Act, which is highly beneficial for Ripple. Coinbase and Tether were protected. Ripple was targeted. And yeah, if we look at the documents here, so we have, a question up here. Mr. Epstein is traveling while he is away. Can you send me papers on the proposed transaction so that I may review them before I present them to him? And we have down here, do you still work with Jeffrey? And if so, we are interested in buying the LLC below that we used to make this Coinbase investment. We did this investment at a $400 million valuation, $1.6 billion valuation. This is 2018, by the way. And we would be willing to buy a position from you at a $2 billion valuation. We would pay $15 million for this $3 million investment. Let us know if this is any interest. And we have down here, IGO Company LLC, which is a USV1 limited liability company. And then down here, here's the information about the financing from Coinbase's lawyers. When we figure out which LLC will be making the $3 million investment, we will have them change the name of the investing entity. This is crazy. Now, all of this really got posted from, again, Stellar News 007. But let's go back to this post here from Alex Cobb. This is the original coming from Cal documents here. I mean, this is kind of insane. Again, we're going to go over this in details. But we have, so when Brock Pierce is chatting with Epstein about Coinbase, he mentions Fred is in New York. That's, again, the co-founder of Coinbase, who started Paradigm with a capital, which is heavily tied to the Chinese Communist Party. Paradigm was in deep with Ethereum, so is Sequoia. Wonder why XRP was delisted off Coinbase so fast after the SEC suit was launched. It was almost immediate. You can see that, again, the co-founder of Coinbase, Fred Ehrsam, hammered Ripple in the second screenshot attached, where he quotes Ripple stating Bitcoin and Ethereum are Chinese-controlled, all while he is partnered with and funded by Sequoia Capital, and Brian Armstrong just happened to attend one of the heaviest Chinese-infiltrated universities in America. And just by total coincidence, Matt Huang's mom had an affiliation to Rice way back when. So moving on to Paradigm, who Coinbase is also invested in. Paradigm has deep, long-standing ties to Ethereum ecosystems through investments, open source contributions, research, and direct holdings. This involvement is well documented and spans multiple years, making Paradigm one of the most influential players in Ethereum's development and infrastructure. Early and ongoing investments in Ethereum-related projects, Paradigm has backed foundational Ethereum ecosystem protocols and infrastructure. Notable examples from their portfolio and funding rounds include leading investments in Uniswap, a major decentralized exchange on Ethereum, Optimism, which is an Ethereum scaling solution, across protocol, bridging and unifying Ethereum layers, Etherealize, bringing traditional finance to Ethereum via tokenization, and other focused on Ethereum scaling, DeFi, and infrastructure. Also, if we're going off of Grok, which is AI from X, Paradigm holds significant Ethereum positions. On-chain reports show them moving large amounts of Ethereum, 17.6 million deposited to Coinbase in late 2025, and other transfers, signaling strategic involvement. They have historically invested directly in Ethereum and Bitcoin. So there you go, a small glimpse into the Epstein history of Coinbase and how involved they happen to be in the ETH ecosystem, the same ecosystem that was funded by CCP Wang Zhang before mainnet's launch, when the Ethereum Foundation was broke and needed bailed out, the same way Zhang that had their founder on the board of the SEC approved Prometheum when Gensler was chair. That's why Fred got so mad. Have the original document from Brock Pierce. This is the follow-ups regarding this. This is where this link comes into play from Cobb. Because again, this is all regarding Coinbase and the controversy between, Ripple and all of this. But then also on the second page here, we have from Fred, Ripple declares itself a better alternative to Bitcoin, and Bitcoin and Ethereum are Chinese controlled in a last-ditch effort to save themselves. Have you no modesty, Ripple? No shame. And again, this is from 12/21/2020. Deep into the lawsuit, guys. And by deep, I mean literally one day. Yeah. All of the anti-Ripple and XRP posts coming from names that were all tied back to this small group that was working with Epstein. And then, last but not least, we have over here from Stellar News 007, the Epstein files just changed everything about Ripple and XRP lawsuit. Jeffrey Epstein asked Larry Summers for intel on Gary Gensler, now the SEC chairman. Well, at least previous SEC chairman. In a 2018 email marked "Do Not Share" or quote, Epstein wrote that Gensler was coming earlier and wants to talk digital currencies. Summers replied that he knew Gary from Treasury in 1990s, called him pretty smart, and noted that he was involved with Hillary campaign and angling for jobs. In 2018, Gary Gensler joined MIT's Media Lab director, Joy Ido. Despite no background in blockchain technology, he advised the lab on its digital currency initiative. This email says the quiet part out loud. Austin Hill admits that Ripple and Stellar were a threat to their ecosystem, meaning the old power circle that wanted control, not freedom. The man who had now regulated crypto was apparently networking through Epstein's circle years before taking office. And what followed? The XRP lawsuit. And yes, you could see all of this. I mean, guys, this is absolutely insane. This confirms everything that we talked about for years and years and years regarding this lawsuit. Now, when we think about Warren as well, because we know that Warren was tied back to all of this, we have over here, remember this post from 2023? Oh, yeah, that's right. What was Senator Warren's staff doing coordinating questions and testimony with officials from the SEC before their leader testified before Warren's committee in 2021? Check this out.
All right, a bombshell report tonight about how Elizabeth Warren, Senator Elizabeth Warren, and her office coordinated testimony with the Security and Exchange Commission ahead of a Senate hearing. The Heritage Foundation Oversight Project, of which I'm associated, through a FOIA request, obtained emails from Warren's office to the office of Chairman Gary Gensler 2 days before his Senate testimony back in September of 2021. The email from Warren's economic policy advisor includes a list of questions. Get this, a list of questions that Senator Warren planned to ask, along with suggested answers for the chairman of the SEC. The advisor also wrote, quote, "Let me know if you're okay with the questions as currently written." 2 days later, she sent a follow-up, quote, "Let me know if it's looking like the chair has any issue with the framing of the questions. Definitely don't want to put him in a tough spot," end quote. And it appears the chairman didn't have any issue with these questions because Senator Warren asked almost verbatim from the email. Check this out.
Chair Gensler, advocates say crypto markets are all about financial inclusion, but the people who are most economically vulnerable are the ones who are most likely to have to withdraw their money the fastest when the market drops. Does this sound like the path to financial inclusion to you?
And again, this is crazy to see, but it was all coordinated. Every single one of the actions, all of the drama, all of the nonsense, all coordinated, all one by one by one. All of the actions, all of the interviews, all of the nonsense. I mean, this is why for years and years and years, we have constantly talked about why all of this was planned ahead of time, why all of this was just one big show that you should not be concerned about. This is just ridiculous. And again, it all goes back to, years before the lawsuit was even a thing, that they were planning all of this because they wanted to protect Bitcoin and Ethereum. This is insane. And it does change everything because, again, it also confirms just how crucial the future on how successful XRP will be. And it also confirms that we chose the right one. So with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys did, definitely leave a like, subscribe, notifications on because of more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord in the description below. And with that being said, guys, it's been Nick. Thanks for watching. Peace out.
Listen, there are all kinds of different narratives around Bitcoin, and a lot of them are incredibly optimistic. Bitcoin's free from censor to control. It's all part of the cypherpunk. Controversial scumbag assorted crooks in recent times appears to have had some pretty insane connections to Bitcoin and its overall development. The criminal, of course, we're talking about here is the guy who definitely did not off himself, Jeffrey Epstein. And we're going to show you the clearest evidence found so far showing the links between Epstein and early era Bitcoin development. Okay, this is going to be shocking if you haven't heard about this stuff before. There's a lot we still don't know, but by the end, you should be able to make up your own mind about, well, just what the heck was going on. And of course, whether any of it really matters now that Bitcoin has BlackRock and Fidelity and Vanguard all out there shilling at its multi-trillion-dollar asset class. So who the heck cares about this early lore of Bitcoin? So buckle up, because the first shocking fact is that Epstein money funded Bitcoin core development. Now, this was a little more complicated than Epstein just handing cash directly to Bitcoin core developers, okay? Because the funds actually went through MIT. This all was revealed in emails from the Epstein estate, which were released last month by the House Oversight Committee. And these communications show that Epstein assisted in funding MIT's Digital Currency Initiative, focused research center. The DCI was founded in 2015, provided funding for Bitcoin core developers soon after the Bitcoin Foundation, which provided funding up until then, had collapsed. So basically, the DCI was founded. It took over providing financial support for Bitcoin development, and a chunk of the money used to do that came from Jeffrey Epstein, which is not necessarily a smoking gun, but an interesting little bit of Bitcoin lore. Of course, Jeffrey Epstein was made aware that there were 5 main Bitcoin developers, 3 of whom joined the Media Lab after it moved quickly following the collapse of the Bitcoin Foundation. We also know that Epstein visited MIT several times, but he did so in secrecy, that he did, and was referred to internally by MIT staff as Voldemort. Gosh, you can't really make this shit up, can you? That's crazy. So this all raises several questions. Most obviously, why? Why would Epstein fund Bitcoin development? Did he want to exert control over its progress? And if so, to what end? Would it have been useful for him in his other activities that he got up to? How would it benefit him to see it succeed besides the financial incentive? Or was it just an investment? Maybe he had 100,000 Bitcoin from the early days, doesn't want to see it do well. Who the hell knows? As things stand, unless more is revealed in still hidden emails, we really can't know the full motivation here, but we do know that he demonstrated ongoing interest in crypto in other ways too, as later on, he seemed to be pushing to use his influence to try to get crypto regulations passed. Remember, this was all back in the wild, wild west days of crypto when BTC was out on the frontier and it was just crazy internet money. Yet in 2018, Jeffrey Epstein was in contact with Trump's former right-hand man, Steve Bannon, pushing him for clarity on crypto taxes. Tell me you want to sell your early Bitcoin stash without telling me you want to sell your early Bitcoin stash, right, Jeffrey? Gosh darn it. And in separate correspondences, not to Bannon, that same year, Epstein also suggested that crypto needs to be thought of as similar to the internet. In another email to Bannon, Epstein also referred to our crypto coin issues. This is in relation to taxes and regulation. But it's the phrasing that leaps out here. Why is it our crypto coin? Who is he referring to besides himself? And why the implication of some kind of ownership over Bitcoin? Does this relate back to his DCI funding at MIT? Or is it just a casual figure of speech? We probably shouldn't read too much into all of that. But again, the answers are not clear, but the connection. You can make money trading Bitcoin, longing it, shorting it, XRP, Solana, Ethereum, whatever your coin choice are. And a great place to do that is over on BitUnix. Available to anyone, anywhere, where you can trade all the top coins with deep liquidity. And here's the deal. It's never been a better time to sign up. When you use the link down below, you deposit $1,000, get $200 back, $2,000, get $400 back. In fact, they have insane whale bonuses all the way up to like deposit $50K and you get $5K back. Craziness, man. Craziness. Okay. Link down below. Go check it out. Get signed up. Start trading the way you should with freedom. The only question you have to ask yourself is, will you start taking your trading seriously? Move it to an exchange that's going to actually source. Had him on the show before. Interesting character. Okay. Digital entrepreneur, trailed by a lifetime of scandal, former child actor, one-time independent presidential candidate, man with great hats. Brock Pierce's resume includes, among many other things, the co-foundings of Tether and Blockchain Capital. Plus, in 2014, he became the president of the Bitcoin Foundation. Remember, that's the foundation that funded Bitcoin development before DCI. Brock was early into EOS back in the day and all the stuff going on with Block One and early to Puerto Rico and all kinds of stuff. Brock brought in none other than Steve Bannon to work with IGE, a Pierce-founded company that pioneered in-game virtual asset trading in 2011. Very, very early in the crypto timeline, Pierce visited the Virgin Islands to attend an Epstein-organized event called Mindshift, participating in a panel discussion on cryptocurrency alongside engineers and scientists. 2011, man, Bitcoin's probably worth like $10 back then. After this, Pierce also attended a meeting at Epstein's Manhattan residence to discuss Bitcoin. By the way, with former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers also present at that meeting. Now, Epstein, you have to understand, was all over the place back then and very well connected, very rich, all this kind of stuff. So meeting with Epstein to talk about Bitcoin is not some kind of like indictment on Brock Pierce here. I want to make that very, very clear. But Brock being an early Bitcoiner, we started to find interesting connections. So the question is what Epstein was aiming for in bringing all these people together. Larry Summers, Brock Pierce, right? Why was he cultivating relationship with Brock Pierce in the first place? But regardless of these uncertainties, making crypto connections. He was inserting himself into the crypto world at its very earliest stages. Overall, then, there's a lot we still cannot be sure about, and it's likely there are a lot more details that will be publicly revealed in the future, or not, because that's the way things go. Potentially, yes. Working with what we have so far, though, the way Epstein funded Bitcoin core development through MIT and the DCI suggests that while he may not actually have been able to exert any kind of control that he may have wanted to do so, he certainly had some kind of vested interest in seeing Bitcoin do well at the very early. He sought proximity to the Bitcoin ecosystem. Maybe he was just an early holder. Bitcoin's available to everybody, of course. Maybe he just wanted to go up. Maybe, of course, it's all very Machiavellian and it's in his archetypically villainous nature. Don't forget, they literally called this guy Voldemort over at MIT. Maybe he saw some kind of personal long-term benefit in terms of power and influence and having BTC disrupt the status quo, or just using it for his trafficking stuff. Who the heck knows? But then that's the thing about Bitcoin. Doesn't care. Jeffrey Epstein was allowed to use Bitcoin. How about this? Decentralized, and it's always been 100% neutral. So 100 different people can view it in 100 different ways. And if you're a villain, you might think, hey, it's a tool that you can exploit. Whereas if you care about liberty, then it's democratic, fair, and a way to expand your freedom. Let's be pragmatic here too. If you want to diversify your TradFi returns, it's also a solid risk-on asset to buy through BlackRock ETFs, because that's where we've come to these days, okay? This kind of respectable financial integration doesn't mean Bitcoin's early years aren't still in some ways deeply mysterious. And just because Epstein was involved at the early stages is not an indictment against Bitcoin. It's interesting for sure, but then Julian Assange was also involved in Bitcoin very, very early. The WikiLeaks was the first company to accept Bitcoin donations. They were early Bitcoiners. So that's a great story to tell. And it tells the opposite story of freedom fighters using Bitcoin instead of villains using Bitcoin. And there's many other such cases. Bitcoin, of course, is neutral. Epstein's connections to Bitcoin, certainly interesting, but certainly no smoking gun either. Let me know what you think down below in the comment section. Thanks for watching.
To Washington Bureau, it is the last orders for public guarantee. Washington correspondent Vinay Simlot joining us live with the very latest. Good morning, Vinay.
Ani, good morning to you. And the Department of Homeland Security funding was a political football over the last couple of weeks. Democrats and the White House traded proposals, but little movement. And it seems like with 18 hours to go, the Department of Homeland Security will lose its funding. blames Republicans for the Homeland Security funding standoff, arguing Congress needs to put guardrails on immigration enforcement.
If the Trump administration is not willing to make serious reforms, I'm not going to provide a dime.
In the negotiation, Democrats say they want to ban masks for ICE agents. President Donald Trump says he won't agree to that.
We have to protect our law enforcement. They want our law enforcement to be totally vulnerable.
And one of the biggest sticking points in a major policy change, President Trump's acting ICE director issued a memo arguing immigration agents can use an administrative warrant to enter homes or private property, not a warrant signed by a federal judge. Democrats want that practice to end.
The average American knows you don't knock on a door and go into a house without a warrant.
Texas Republican Congressman Michael McCall, who's not running for re-election, says he thinks immigration agents need judicial warrants in certain situations.
When you talk about a home seizure, breaking down doors of a house, we do have a Fourth Amendment judicial warrants, I think, should play there.
And a point of agreement between Republicans and Democrats, body cameras for immigration agents. Now, there was an agreement between Republicans and Democrats negotiated largely by Senator Katie Britt over in the Senate, and that included a deal that would fund body cameras and some other use of force restrictions on ICE. But those talks broke down after the shootings of Alex Preddy and Renee Good in Minneapolis. And since then, Democrats have been looking for more guardrails on immigration enforcement.
Vinay, if DHS runs out of funding, which programs would be affected by that?
Yeah, largely ICE and Customs and Border Protection would have the funding to continue. That's because the Big Beautiful Act that passed last July had billions in extra funding for ICE and Customs and Border Protection. So that would continue. Leaders in the Department of Homeland Security say TSA, Coast Guard, and Secret Service could lose paychecks depending on how long this shutdown of DHS lasts. And then the FEMA administrators, associate administrators say there's enough money in the disaster relief fund for FEMA as long as there's not another major disaster in the coming weeks.
Vinay Simlat live in Washington, D.C. Thanks, Vinay.
If you have not, and the genius of Candace commentators around today. And the question that I ask now is, if you talk to her, and she's talked about remote viewing and the paranormal and being able to tell the future, many people say is not in any way too far-fetched. You ask yourself the question, and I'll ask you again because I asked it once before. Is there a way? Does it exist in the remotest of possibilities for Charlie Kirk to be alive? It's called pseudocide, for those of you keeping track at home. Is it possible for him to be alive now, somewhere? Could all of that have been an act? Could the blood have been a squib? Could all of this, all of the production have been contrived and maybe not known by a lot of people? Remember Elizabeth Smart? Remember the young lady? There's a Netflix special of her. She was missing for like what a year, and then popped back up again. She was gone. Is it possible for people to be gone for during 9/11? Remember Muhammad Atta's passport? They found his passport on the ground intact. People believe that. They believe that a passport on the person of a hijacker in a plane that crashed into a building and caught on fire and blew up. Somehow this fireproof asbestos passport was flung out of the window and it landed in pristine condition on the ground. Is that possible? How about the number of actual hijackers? Go back and look, who were not rumored, but who said, I'm alive. I'm not dead. Do you want me to go on? Do you think this never happens? Do you think there are people who have never died, who have never been removed, or stories that were never followed through on? Is it possible? We are dealing with imaginable today, so nefarious, because I know, and I don't want to in any way portend her doom or something ill-fated, because I think the world of her. I respect her greatly, and I don't like joking about harm that may befall her. But you have to ask the question, a very simple question: is this even remotely possible? I want you to think about something. I want you to think very, very carefully about this story. You want to know when nobody is willing to say out loud. You want to know the question? The question that sits there like a loaded gun on the table while everyone else pretending it's a flower or something benign. Fine. I will say it. What if the story we were handed about Charlie Kirk is not the whole story, or at all the story? I'm not telling you what to believe. No. I am telling you to look at the pattern. Look at the speed. Look at how fast the celerity. Look at how fast the narrative snapped into place perfectly. And in modern America, the official version of events arrives prepackaged, shrink-wrapped, and ready for consumption before the public and John Q. Citizen has even finished asking its first question. And you will accept the story. And that alone should make any thinking person pause. My friend, we live in an era where information moves at light speed, but verification limps behind on crutches, hobbled by the weight of the impossibility of the event in the first place. And yet we're expected to accept final conclusions in curiosity. Just nod, move along, get along, ask nothing, repeat the approved sentence like a chorus. My character does not buy that. My character never, ever, ever buys that. My soul, my sense of morality, I don't buy that. I'm not saying I believe everything, but you will not tell me what to believe. Consider this. Consider now how power works in this country. Large organizations, large groups do not merely react to events. They manage perception, and they manage your questions that you ask. They curate emotion, and they understand that controlling the narrative in the official story is often more important than controlling the facts on the ground and the facts before the moment. Think about this. History is filled with moments where the public story and the private reality were separated by this huge gap. And governments and corporations and media executives and advocacy empires have all demonstrated a kind of an incredible talent, an incredible and remarkable talent for message discipline when their survival depends on it. That's what we're talking about right now. And when you talk about this, when you talk about people who might or might not be alive, think maybe they didn't happen. When threats are made, it's the incredulity. This is McLuhan's line. It's the impossibility, the incredulity that people have regarding the story. That's what keeps the narrative, keeps going. They tell you, this can't be. How do you know anything? I've talked to you before about this. How do you know that bin Laden was killed? How do you know that Saddam Hussein was killed? How do you know anything? How do you know anything? To Lavelle, what would you do? Let's say you're someplace and you look up and you say, hey, That's Charlie Kirk. Tall man, very distinct look. But let's assume you said, wait a minute, I saw Charlie Kirk. Who are you going to tell? Go ahead. You're a nut. You're out of your mind. He's dead. Don't you know that? What are you talking about? Ask somebody who's ever seen a UFO whether they called the police or reported it. Go ahead. Ask them. You see, that's the thing. People believe that the truth is very easy to understand and easy to accept and very clear, very apodictic, very black and white, very good versus evil, obvious or not. They believe this. They believe this more than anything you can imagine. And you know what's funny about this? They've never had it really called into account. They've never a while back when they believed, and I told you this, that John F. Kennedy, I don't know what the story was. He faked his death or something because he wanted to run for Senate and Hillary Clinton. I don't know. But when I heard this story, I kept asking people at the time, tell me why it's impossible. Unlikely is one thing. Why is it impossible? Why is anything impossible? You see, what they've told you for the longest time is, you're a peasant. Look at me. Shut up. Don't ask that question. You're a conspiracy theorist. You're a nut. You're paranoid. You think things that nobody thinks. There's something wrong with you. You're crazy. You will not answer any questions from those people. You will forget their questions. You will ask no questions. This is exactly what's going on. I can't say this enough. I learned this during 9/11. And I used to ask, where are the people who supposedly died? Who were they? How do we know? Remember Todd Beamer? Look up Todd Beamer. Let's roll. Do you remember that? Let's roll. I think it was Flight 93, wasn't it? When they commandeered, when the terrorists overtook the cockpit, and these brave Americans went and took them back. And he said at the time, let's roll. Todd Beamer, this hero, said, let's roll. Question, how do you know what he said? Who told anybody what he said? Did anybody write this down? Did anybody record this? Was anybody on the phone? And that's enough phones. They were on their phones. In 2001, the technology for talking to people from a flip phone, not an air phone, but a flip phone, was so right. No, Beamer said. How did they know that flew the plane, the Pentagon? How did they know this? How did they know where they were seated? How did they know all of these people who existed after the event? How did they know where they were sitting, who they were, what they looked like? How did this happen? And the number of people, listen to what I'm saying, who said, no, this Egyptian, he's alive. We don't want to hear that. We don't want to hear that. What if you picked up the phone and called up your local Channel 7 and said, listen, you're not going to believe this, but I was in Butte, Montana, and I swear to God, I saw Charlie Kirk. He's there. And it was Charlie Kirk. And I even said, hey, Charlie, and he turned. And I've got a picture. Hello, hello. How dare you ask questions? How dare you ask questions? That's the official narrative. Don't go against the narrative. Don't you understand what I'm telling you? So let me go back and ask you the question. And do you think I'm crazy? Do I look crazy? Don't answer that. I'm not crazy. I haven't told you it's even possible. The question I'm thinking of is it impossible? And does the very fact that you were so sworn to repel any notion of this, does that ensure the fact that it could very well take place? These are the weirdest times we have ever lived in. Do you think Epstein could be alive? There were people who looked at the auricles of his ear, the pinna, the particular fold pattern, the unique, almost fingerprint-like style of the folds of the ear. And they said, that's not him. They compared pictures of the ear. There are people who believe that Joe Biden might have died before, and there was somebody walking around with a mask, that the new Joe Biden is taller. I've heard that there have been doubles for Melania. There were doubles for a lot of people. That sounds crazy. Saddam Hussein had doubles all the time. Think about this. Think about this. Before you answer this, how do you know what you know? And define impossible for me. My friends, I want to thank you. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for supporting the cause. Thank you for opening your mind and using it to think. There's a lot of questions I've been asking about this kidnapping that went on. A lot of things don't make sense about that one. And believe me, like Hunter Thompson says, when the going gets weird, the weird turn pro, and there's nobody you want around asking the questions like I ask. So thank you, my friends. Please like this video. Subscribe to the channel. I've got some questions for you. Thank you for watching. And comment as you see fit.
Jeffrey Epstein's 10,000-acre ranch in New Mexico, known as Zorro, it had no idea he also had an entire ranch.
Zorro Ranch in Santa Fe County. Tonight, the state land commissioner demanding an investigation.
Someone claiming they were a former staffer at Zorro Ranch, writing, "Did you know somewhere in the hills outside of the Zorro, 2 foreign girls were buried on orders of
Only 2?
Jeffrey and Madam G. Both died by strangulation during rough fetish sex."
Bodies are long gone, I imagine. I think so too.
The emailer says they had 7 videos, including some with minors.
Matters. I think that New Mexicans need answers. I think the victims need answers.
That's what prompted New Mexico Public Lands Commissioner Stephanie Garcia Richard to send
realistically, we don't have the technology, as far as I know, that can just like x-ray the land and figure out where bones could be.
We actually do have the technology. It's called GPR, or ground penetrating radar.
Also, they could have burned the bones as well. I don't think there's really anything we
letter
do.
To the Attorney General and the U.S. Attorney's Office Tuesday, asking them to thoroughly investigate
I've never seen that.
Disturbing
Can
allegation
LiDAR do
regarding
that?
the referenced burials.
We need to get to the bottom of really what happened.
Commissioner says she's ready to offer all state land for investigation, but can't do anything about the ranch since it's privately owned, bought by new owners and renamed.
We asked the U.S. attorney for a comment. They referred us to the FBI, which declined comment.
Okay, yeah, great.
This ranch was also mentioned multiple times when we were looking through the jerky mentions in the mails.
Harvard professor Martin Nowak emailed Ghislaine Maxwell in 2002 to thank her for her hospitality. Then, out of nowhere, "I am so happy that I did not kill anybody. Can blank make some jerky? I think we should landscape all around the house to use the water if possible. Lodge and ranch central if needed. If the main house is not enough, Steve needs a 6 to 8 ounce portion of jerky. I gave you all the jerky we had, roughly 2 pounds. My plan is to make a batch before I leave for LSJ, and some of that will go to Steve, and the rest will go to you at LSJ when I arrive. Little St. James Island. We talked about this at the ranch. Why isn't it done?" So logically, that means that they were doing this off of the island. Maybe he could be at the ranch.
This is also something insane. In 2008, Jeffrey Epstein won the 80 million Powerball jackpot on behalf of his Zorro Trust. People are understandably wondering if this was rigged and a money laundering scheme. What are the odds a billionaire bought a lotto ticket and won?
Jeffrey Epstein's Zorro Ranch report surfaced in 2019 regarding a never-realized plan by the late Jeffrey Epstein to use his ranch for a baby-making factory or a eugenics project where he hoped to inseminate women with his DNA. Bro, this is too much? Oh, this isn't even... I think that this is the tip of the iceberg.
I asked folks who want to talk about this very scientific poll you just ran.
Yeah.
On X, I think you had 150,000 people participate. Is Jeffrey Epstein the other option was?
Did he kill himself? That got 3%, if I remember. 3% of the 147,000 people who took this poll think Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. It was like,
and Dan Bongino was one of those, I guess,
that was
participated.
Dan Bongino and Cattell obviously took the poll.
Yeah.
And they called all their family and said, do this. That's how we got to 3%. And then this was surprising. It started out like 30-40 and it flipped to 40-30, but it's 40-some% said that he's still alive. And 30-some% say that he's dead, but he was murdered, basically. And 18 or 20, something like that. 18% said, just show me the poll.
Yeah.
I list that on the poll now because I realize that is what a lot of people want. They watching the traffic on that poll.
Right.
So there's 18%. There's no way in hell I'm going to disclose my preference here and then flag myself for all time.
By the way, you may be kidding, but that's precisely what I do when I take polls like this. Because
oh, you're part of the 18%.
I know they're coming after me.
Just show me the poll. And again, not scientific. Obviously, a lot of those are my followers. But here's the thing. I wasn't paying a lot of attention when Epstein disappeared. We can just all agree we can't find him, right?
Yeah.
You know, either whichever the three options you chose. And maybe number 4, just show me the poll. Maybe you're thinking something else that I didn't even imagine. But we all agree he's not around. We can't find him. The question would be, is he the kind of guy who thought he was cornered and there was no way out? I don't think so. Like, Jeffrey Epstein, to me, seemed like the kind of guy he was just waiting for them to come and unlock the key and take him back to one of his mansions.
Mm-hmm.
And he knew, it, just like with the first conviction, he just would have to wait for a while and play his cards right. And I think he was that arrogant. That kind of arrogance is built because you got away with it before, and then you got away with it 1,000 times, and you got so much dirt. He's probably thinking, if I can get back to my hard drive, this is all over with,
Yeah.
right? And so I don't know what.
Or just indispensable. Like, he was the guy that fixed problems for this elite class of financiers and politicians.
Like his thought process, he suggested Ehud Barak. Think of all the people who owe you something, and then start from there.
Yeah.
Like, those were his words to Ehud Barak. That's what he had to be thinking in the jail cell. So, the first time I saw this on the news that Epstein killed himself, I thought, well, maybe he did. It seemed as reasonable and plausible as any other outcome. But now, as we get the full color of who he was and the kinds of things he did and what he got away with, 3%.
The Black Book is this book of contacts that are Epstein's.
But that's exactly why it matters. Let's begin with someone who's been paying attention to the signs most people miss.
But it was deemed legitimate enough to be used as evidence in Ghislaine Maxwell's trial a couple years ago. So it's considered to give it was then considered to give a relatively accurate portrayal of the time of sort of, frequently contacted figures in Epstein's. So, there may have been some duplicity there, but again, I don't know. But what's important here is that Rodriguez, and when he tried to shop this book around, he circled names that he said were co-conspirators and material witnesses to Epstein's sex trafficking crimes. So Flavio Briatore is one of the circled names. Alan Dershowitz is a circled name. Leslie Wexner, Jean-Luc Brunel, who is the French accomplice of Epstein that died in prison while awaiting trial in 2022. And then Donald Trump is also a circled name, which oddly enough hasn't really gotten a lot of coverage over the years. Nick Bryant, of course, talked about that, but a lot of people act like Trump was never accused. And then Brad Edwards later went out and said to Derek Brose when he was interviewed by him that Trump had actually been very helpful. But of course, Trump and Epstein at that point had a personal falling out. And also Brad Edwards' law partner, Stanley Pottinger, has kind of a suspect history, sort of acting like the Democrat equivalent of William Barr, which is basically a mop-up man for government scandals. Over the course of his lengthy career as a lawyer working on behalf of the government and the Department of Justice. So there's a lot of question marks there. But Rodriguez didn't specify why he circled those names, and he died the year that the book was published by information on the circumstances of his death. And that's also, of course, the year that Donald Trump declares his candidacy for president. Yeah, I mean, it's possible, but at the time, Trump was not a political candidate, and a lot of the other names that are circled are people that are well known to have been accomplices to the crime, like Maxwell, like Jean-Luc Brunel, Leslie Wexner, Jeffrey Epstein's main benefactor. And we also do know, for example, that the most famous Epstein victim of all, who died earlier this year, Virginia Roberts, she was recruited by Ghislaine Maxwell while working at Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort. So there's a possibility that there may have been something there. But again, we don't really know because we can't ask the guy. But it is convenient that he cannot be asked. But there you go.
And there was no investigation into the circumstances of his death in prison, even given these suspicions around Epstein dying in similar circumstances?
I don't believe so. I was looking into it and was able to find out some other things, but was unable to find information on how he died in prison while serving a sentence related to this. What's also fascinating to me, though, is that 2015 is the year that Gawker starts to be sued into oblivion by Peter Thiel. And now we know that in 2014 and 2015, Thiel and Epstein were meeting regularly. And Peter Thiel was also an FBI informant during that time. During the particular period of time that the Palm Beach case in particular spanned. And so that book became public. Well, it was originally published and made actually public by the investigative journalist Nick Bryant, who's also known for investigating the Franklin scandal, which is sort of a Reagan-Bush era pedophile scandal involving government officials. And he published that at Gawker, I believe, in 2015, but he came into possession of it sometime, I think, around 2012 or so, he said. But prior to that, the FBI obtained it from Jeffrey Epstein's former butler, Alfredo Rodriguez, who died the same year it was published in 2015. But earlier, he had tried to basically sell the Black Book, initially to one of the victims' lawyers, Brad Edwards, who works with Stanley Pottinger. I forget the name of, but they're two of the main Epstein lawyers. And so instead of buying the book, I mean, obviously, it's fair that he wouldn't pay an enormous, the large sum that Rodriguez was asking for it. But Edwards instead tipped off the FBI and basically sicked the FBI on this guy. And the FBI set up a sting operation to buy the book from him, and Rodriguez went to prison, which later Epstein, when he was asked about it, said about the Black Book, he was like, it never should have been published. It was terrible that it was published, but now my butler, or my former butler is in prison for the crime of publishing it. Of course, I'm paraphrasing. That's not a direct quote, but that was essentially what he was saying. So he agreed with Rodriguez being put away. And it's important to point out that Epstein was an FBI informant during this period.
Group also called on Congress of optimism on Capitol Hill right now. Doug, good morning.
Breakthrough is a long way off.
But after midnight, the TSA says it will stop paying 63,000 workers. FEMA and the Coast Guard also get cut off.
The motion is not agreed to.
The final chance to fund the Department of Homeland Security before tonight for changes in immigration enforcement.
Today's strong vote was a shot across the bow to Republicans. Democrats will not support a blank check for chaos.
We have to protect our law enforcement. Very important.
President Trump yesterday reiterated his concerns that some Democratic demands, including a ban on face masks for ICE agents, endangered law enforcement.
I have proposed, and President Trump has concurred, that this surge operation conclude.
And just hours before the vote, Border Czar Tom Homan announced an end to the immigration enforcement surge in Minnesota. But that wasn't enough to win over critics in Congress. And some questioned whether the shutdown would have much impact.
There's absolutely no reason for workers to be furloughed because there's more than enough money to keep those organizations operating for the next couple of weeks.
If there is a deal, but as it stands, they're out all of next week. Back to you guys.
All right, Doug Luzader live in Washington for us this morning. Thank you, Doug.
Grand Rising, everybody. Much love, much respect to everyone. We're going to start this off like we always do. Playing some Grand Rising, everybody. Much love, much respect to everyone. We're going to start this off like we always do. Playing some Grand Rising, everybody. Much love, much respect to everyone. We're going to start this off like we always do. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. We should be good now. No echoing. My bad, y'all. Grand Rising, power to the motherfucking people. Hopefully everybody good this morning. Early AM check-in, man. I had a couple things playing at the same time. Shout out my brother Voodoo Child and my brother Brian Flat Power God, man. Grand Rising, man. Power to the motherfucking people, man. Darius McNair, what's good, bro? Much love and respect, man. Let me find my music now. Let me find my music. All right, that's what's happening. Take that down. Here we go.
Set.
Hey, black motherfucking power to the Black Power family. Top of the morning.
Class and session.
Appreciate you,
So
Rudy
time
John.
to get the notes, the quickest way to
We straight now.
Oh, this shit I'm kicking is forbidden. Better listen, bro. A politician preaching love is the biggest joke. See what they do is use this shit as a tool. Got us focus on these fools and putting shit in our food. Fighting to free your mind is kind of hollow but true. The system make you a zombie if you follow the rules, so we rebel. But not too many live it to tell till they find the cheat code using digital scales. Paradise is aborted when the mission is failed. Heaven and hell collide like prison and jail. And you don't need religion just to say you awake. Even dumber than you look, you think you came from an ape. Religion,
Science need religion.
One tell a story and the
other paint the picture.
But listen, nigga, if you dig a little deeper, you can find that little rabbit in the mother of the reaper. I'm the best for a reason. There's a message in the speaker when the cosmos.
It's taken me 25 years to come to the conclusion that I have come to with the existence of a supranational committee composed of 300 men called the Committee of 300, also known in intelligence circles as the Olympians.
300 people you've never heard of.